It's not a remake. It's not a sequel. From the poster included, Adam Green promised something new. And it was something new. Oftentimes when we speak about notorious horror villains or creatures of Hollywood, we hear Jason Voorhees, we hear Michael Myers, we hear Freddy Krueger, but there's one person that people don't talk about as much, and that is Victor Crowley in Adam Green's Hatchet 2006. The movie follows a group of tourists on a swamp tour who encounter the legendary deformed killer Victor Crowley, played by Kane Hodder, who also played Jason Voorhees.
Goddamn queer's got a squat to take a leak.
Even casting some of horror's veteran actors in the first film, Kane Hodder, Robert Englund, and the iconic Tony Todd, who may rest in peace.
Hit his head right on the roof and sued me for negligence. That cocksucker! I
say with respect, I always thought Hatchet didn't take itself very seriously. It always felt a bit goofy, it had humour, it was gory, and it was a movie made for the fans, by the fans. Not some big production of corporate people waiving rights to the narrative being changed to fit their own liking. It was old school American horror. The beauty of the Hatchet films is that what you see isn't being ran through some computer for digitally altered versions. Even the scene of Victor Crowley tearing a woman's face off, all done with trick photography and prosthetics. Each part of it would be done by hand, and I feel like practical effects is really where horror films shine the brightest. When Adam Green was 8 years old, he attended a summer camp and he was warned to watch out for the Hatchet face.
Off the bat. And that summer I went to summer camp and the counselors told us to stay away from this one cabin or else Hatchet face would get us. And I was all into this stuff, so I was like, this is awesome, what's he gonna do? They just said, well, he'll get you.
Hatchet narrates the tale of Ben, Joel Moore, and Marcus, Deon Richmond, friends on a New Orleans vacation aimed at helping Ben move on from a recent breakup. Their journey takes an eerie turn as the haunted swamp tour with strangers leads them right to face the grotesquely disfigured Victor Crowley, played by legend Kane Hodder. The local monster legend turned into a horrifying reality. While it may seem like a typical slasher film on paper, the movie boasts an exceptional cast. Kane Hodder, known for portraying Jason Voorhees, among legends like Robert Englund, Tony Todd, and Joshua Leonard, and even bringing Halloween's own Danielle Harris in for the next subsequent installments. The legend of Victor Crowley sees a deformed monster searching the dark nights for his father. A tragic story of being bullied as a child, growing up into a monster who just wants his father back. Adam Green's love for metal seemed to bleed into his love for horror. In a way, it shows his influence very beautifully. The crowds in Mardi Gras, it's all depravity, and we love it for it. And I even read that this movie donned a motley crew of cast, which is just fun wordplay. There's nothing as interesting to a horror fan than a haunted swamp tour, and the cherry on top being that it would be presented by someone like Reverend Zombie, played by Tony Todd. Gross commentary on sex work, and while it does work in the film, I find it a bit uncomfortable, mainly with Doug Shapiro's very perverse character. This film doesn't do too much new that we haven't seen before, but it takes what was great about the classic horror films and it brought them into a different generation. It wasn't inventing something necessarily, but it was an inspired piece by someone who grew up on its influences, and it gives you what it is trying to give you. Adam Green is a horror fan. It seems like it's not enough nowadays to make a good horror film. There needs to be respect from and for the person making it. Adam Green ticks all the boxes and then some. And with Hatchet being labelled a horror and a comedy, I can assure you any semblance of comedic layering never undermines the importance of keeping a serious tone.
I done heard it again.
That ain't the story.
That's the gist of it anyway.
It's not even the house.
Guys, would you just let me do my job? Save our boss.
I believe they mastered it with good balance, and Parry Shen was an absolute gem of the series. Even then, everyone else fit into the role so very well. The three films do a good job of proving their worth, and in terms of continuity, the sequels added a lot of emotion with the acting of Danielle Harris. The emotional story really kicked in from the second film, but the comedy worked alongside it very well. I believe Adam Green perfectly reminded us just how fun slasher films can be. We spend a lot of time dissecting films and pick things apart for greater understanding, let's say. But not every film is like Scream or one of these movies where everything needs to be understood because there's deep layers to things.
What a genius. You do know the vibrator goes in your cooch and not your ear, right? Hey, why don't you suck your dad off again, bitch?
I will right after you're done.
All that matters is that it was fun and it was entertaining. It's old school practical horror, but with its funny moments. Surprisingly, it had some characters in which I didn't totally hate. You cared for some of these characters, which doesn't feel like a commonality in early 2000s horror films. I often find them to have really obnoxious personalities, but these characters were just dumb, and you don't want them to die for just being dumb. It's straight in point of being written well with the comedic lines and then taken by the actors and delivered perfectly, because it's not written by somebody who's funny but then read by someone who can't portray that. Even Adam Green casting legends like Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, and Tony Todd, but didn't use their presence as a push to bring the audience in or keep them on screen for retention. They worked as almost a cameo. This is something horror films need to do more of.
Get them back. We'll be bringing them right back.
I said over my dead body.
Well then, you leave me no choice.
Go ahead. Shoot me. Go on, do it. Shoot a defenseless old man. Go on, pull the trigger.
You bring in a famous horror actor and they're killed within the first few minutes. We all know where that inspiration came from. And I believe that I think horror films need to bring people in as small cameos rather than having them be the main actor just because they're famous. I'm not talking about Scream, wink wink. But even so, Hatchet came out during a time of remakes. You have The Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Amityville, House of Wax. Hatchet used their poster tagline to hook people in. As stated at the beginning, it's not a remake, it's not a sequel, and it's not based on a Japanese one. This allowed them to stand out among the myriad of films in that particular culture. The Hatchet films stand as pieces of love from the horror films its creator grew up watching. None of them are looked at as major successes, but are widely loved by the horror community and even compared to in the goriness of the Damien Leone Terrifier films. Hatchet was filled with people who loved the genre and were adored by those who loved the genre. And in that sense, it could have never failed. It isn't a major box office success, but in every other way, it was a major success. And then you can take into account that there's probably money been made from the DVD and Blu-ray sales. I also read somewhere on Reddit that Adam Green's relationship with MPAA and theaters wasn't very good after Hatchet 2 was pulled out of theaters, so he vowed not to put them back in. I always would have imagined that issues like that with Hatchet would be a struggle, because getting control over how much gore and violence you're allowed to put into films just sounds frustrating, because regulations always try and keep it under lock. It makes me wonder, do you think Hatchet would work better in today's generation, or was it perfect for the mid-2000s? Now obviously Adam Green probably wouldn't ever do a remake of Hatchet because his whole slogan was, it's not a remake, but it is interesting to think about. This video is dedicated to Tony Todd. May you rest in peace.